Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market.
Good morning. It's podcast number 6 with the David and David on Real Estate. David Corman, good morning. How are you today?
Great. Beautiful morning. Sun is out. The temperatures are up. People are feeling a little bit better getting outside. So it's great. And
getting your vitamin D.
Great time to be involved in the real estate market. Things are happening. People are out there.
It really is. And, we're still seeing lots of really good activity. Properties are selling. The market is stabilizing a little bit. We're seeing a few more conditional offers come through, and it's a much more enjoyable environment to be working with for both buyers and sellers. Still a strong sellers market, but things are quieting down from the peak that we're seeing. So we're still seeing properties moving, but right now more than ever, pricing is really important. And what we're seeing is we're still seeing sellers hanging on to some of those high prices that we've seen in March and April, and it's really working against them. The market isn't reacting really well to sellers really pricing those properties high and hoping to get those high prices. But as long as you have good guidance from your agents and you price your property appropriately for today's market, we're still seeing lots of movement out there. It's still a great seller's market.
Yeah, and that's a great comment, the guidance from your agent, because the agent, part of their role is to manage the expectations of their client. It's to figure out what the price is, what the fair market, what it should sell for, but it's also to manage expectations. And and people aren't in the business. They're all of a sudden they're ready to sell their house, and all they're reading in the paper and seeing on the news everywhere and online is how much over asking people got and all these crazy prices and everything. They say, okay, my turn. I want to get a crazy price too. And it's just, and that's probably the agent's very important role to manage those expectations. Like something selling over asking, you can comment on this better than I could, David, but it's meaningless. Like what is the asking? Was the asking a real price, or was the asking just a low ball to entice a bunch of offers? So of course you're going to be selling over asking, right?
And it's a difficult situation, and we have conversations with our agents on a daily basis and really try to guide them. But our agents take the whole aspect of fiduciary duties and working the best interest of their clients to the next level. And our agents want to get those aggressive prices for the seller. But at the end of the day, we're confined by what the market's doing. And if the market isn't there and isn't supporting those really high prices, well, then we have to lead our clients accordingly and try to get them the best possible price in the current market. And we have these conversations, and it's really a tug and pull relationship all the time, because our agents really want to go that extra mile and fight for that extra price. But we have to be careful not to do it at the detriment of the seller.
Right. And there has been a bit of a change. You're, like you said before, you're seeing more conditional offers. We're seeing a few more conditional offers come in as well, which is sort of nice to see. These things don't happen overnight. So in our office, we're still swamped with requests to review status certificates in 2 hours or 3 hours because they want to go in with an unconditional offer. So we're still doing lots of that. All our lawyers are going crazy with that because we think we got our day planned, and then we get these requests, and we try and accommodate as many as we can. And so we'll be grateful as lawyers when that market settles down a little bit, because it puts a lot of stress on us to respond that fast to review a status certificate.
Well, your office has always been exceptional. I know that Tamor reviewed one for me personally a couple weeks ago, and it was just incredible to see. I think he did it in a matter of 2 hours, but it was great to get that sort of response from him. And that relationship enables our agents to really make the right decisions and to give the right guidance and protection to our clients in those tough situations. Because I know a lot of agents would just be like, well, you know what, another unit sold in the building, we're good to go. That's not how we do our business here.
No,
we want to make sure
that's not good enough.
No way. You want to make sure whenever you buy a condominium, you're not only buying the unit itself, but you're buying the health of the building. And that's something that professional needs to check, make sure we have adequate reserve funds, there's no lawsuits, what the bylaws entail. I mean, something as simple as some buildings do not allow pets, right?
Right.
And pets are
Right.
such an integral part of a person's family. And, we had a situation where about 14 years ago, an agent sold a condominium to a client that has a medium-sized dog, and it was such a frustrating experience for that client. And my brokerage was retained to sell that condo and to find another condo for that person to live in. But had he had the right guidance from the beginning and the right lawyers look at the status certificate and educated himself from the start, he would never be in that situation. So important to not only look at the unit itself, but also check into the health of the company and the building.
Yeah, and as you discovered, the size of the dog matters, right? Sometimes it's an absolute prohibition against pets or certain kinds of pets. Sometimes it's a limitation on how big they can be. And we've experienced that too with clients that have big dogs. And it's by weight, it's by size, sometimes it's by type of dog. There's certain breeds that sometimes are not allowed in a building. So you need an agent to actually read what it says in the rules and regulations. You need a lawyer to review it properly.
Yep.
And not, like we talked about before, David, not all agents are created equally, not all lawyers are created equally. And that's why you do as much training as you do. And that's why we meet regularly as a group of lawyers to make sure we're all being thorough and understanding and going through procedures, because it's important. And I think I've mentioned before in these podcasts, we're in the process of looking to add another lawyer. So if you know anybody out there that wants to join our team. So we've been interviewing lawyers that have been out, 1, 2, 3, 5 years experience, a couple with more than that. And one of the things we ask them is, do you review status certificates? Do you have experience in doing that? What do you look for? And what is your firm that you're currently at? Like, what do they do? And you'd be shocked at some of the responses we get about what they don't do. Like they look for certain things, they're looking for 5 things, and that's it. And
Wow.
those things, they're moving, if they're spending 15 minutes on it, they look for those things and that's it. They're not looking at the financials, not looking at the budget, they're not looking at the reserve fund. So many of them. Okay. And these are lawyers at firms that are trying to do real estate transactions. So
it's scary. When you put it like that, it's really scary. But the other thing that most people are not aware of is that the Condominium Act supersedes the Residential Tenancies Act, right? And this is also really, really important to note, because if you are renting an apartment in a condominium complex, there's certain rules and regulations if that building has that supersede the Residential Tenancy Act. So really important to read through that status document, understand what their rules are, especially as they intersect with the Residential Tenancies Act, to really ensure what you can and cannot do, and how, if you do put a tenant in there, how the tenant's rights might be affected in a positive or negative way as well.
Yeah, no, that's great advice too. So anyways, we're dealing with these every day. I look forward to the day when we're not reviewing the status certificates on that much of a rush for an unconditional offer. We can get back to it. You sign an agreement, you got conditional on reviewing a status certificate in 2 or 3 days after receipt, which is back to the norm, and then we deal with it accordingly. But we always deal with the markets as they are, and right now we're still in a pretty hot, heavy market. Even I think you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it seems like there's a lot more supply on the market. So I think that's allowed there to be less offers, multi-offers, like the volume of multi-offers on each property seems to have gone down. So that's probably contributing as well. We're in the middle of May, right?
Historically, we're still low on inventory, right? When you look at May year over year, but we are seeing the numbers starting to increase slowly. And we still have the stay-at-home order, right? So which is affecting the buying side as well. People are not getting out there. And the other thing is, I think it's been a really long winter for most people. Everybody's been cooped up in their homes. So, the minute we have a little bit nicer weather, everybody's getting outside in a big way, as they should.
Yeah. Yeah. And everybody's just so happy to get outside and enjoy some fresh air, even if they're confined to their own backyard, or or they can go to a park. But anyways, I think everybody's struggling with what these restrictions are and things like that. Like my daughter came over for a backyard visit last week, and she was frustrated. I said, "What's the matter?" She said, I just, we just put the kids down to sleep. She's got, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. And before that, we went to the park. We're allowed to go to the park. We went to the park. There had to be 100 kids and 1 or 2 parents for each kid. And there's all kinds of people there at the park. So we're allowed to do that, but I'm not really allowed to bring my kids to your backyard to play in your sandbox. And it just doesn't compute. It just doesn't make sense. And everybody's going through those type of things in their heads, right? And it's a struggle. It's a struggle.
My favorite one is the recreational boating one. You're not allowed to take your boat out on the lake. They're covering the boat ramp, so you can't launch your boat.
Right.
And, the argument there is if you're within your bubble, like if your family's going out on the boat,
why not?
You know what I mean? I mean, if you're not within your bubble, if you're inviting guests and other, family members or friends and family, I mean, that, you shouldn't definitely do. But if you're staying within your bubble and you want to go out on the open lake, I mean, it's just a tough one to justify, right?
Well, yeah, and the same thing goes for other activities like tennis and golf. If you're playing with people in your bubble, it should be a no-brainer. The problem, I think, is if they open it, how are they going to police that that's who it is? But there's been 0 studies showing that the spread of this virus is from people playing tennis or golf or going on a boat, right? Anyways, maybe that's why we're not in politics, David.
Yeah. Absolutely. But David, I share your sentiment. I mean, I look forward to the days where, we have time, right? We have time for conditions, we have time for inspections, we have time for status certificates. I think, being in an environment where you have to rush through some of those decisions, it's not a good situation for the buyer. It's not a good situation for the seller. And this is where, a lot of issues seem to come up, issues that would have been resolved as you're going through your due diligence period previously, right? Like if there's water damage in the basement, you do a home inspection, then you follow up with a waterproofing company, you get a quote, you start getting comfortable with that damage or that situation, and then you make a informed decision whether you want to proceed forward or not, right? In the absence of a home inspection, that opens up the situation for litigation, right? For both parties, for the seller as well, right? Initially, the seller might think, well, you know what? I got away scotch-free. You know what? Firm offer, no damage. This is great. But then, as we know, statute of limitations are 2 years. And any time between that first 2-year period, from when the buyer first is aware of the problem, I believe, right? A lawsuit can come in.
Right. And it also depends on a determination of whether there's a latent defect or a patent defect. Like if it was something apparent that anybody should be able to see just when they walk through the house, not a professional home inspector, but anybody, the buyer and the agent, they would see something. So it's not hidden or anything like that. But there's other things that could be considered latent defects that are hidden that you couldn't see even on an inspection because it was covered up. It wasn't really fixed properly. It was sort of covered up. So when those issues come up after closing, the seller's still responsible for that, and the evidence, if the evidence shows that they knew about it, and not only did they not fix it properly, but they took steps to band-aid it and maybe cover it up, hoping that they get away with it. Well, the reality is you don't get away with it if the problem pre-existed and you took steps to make sure the buyers didn't know about it.
Yeah, I'm always of the opinion that you can work through any issues in construction. Like, I mean, there's really no issue that you can't work through as long as 2 people work together and there's a meeting of the minds and there's cooperation. You can fix any issue, and it's better to fix all those issues up front than deal with this high pressure firm environment and then it leading to lawsuits and other things that happen down the line.
Well, from our discussions, our approach is always let's do what we can to get the deal closed and avoid litigation. Like we serve everybody's interests better, our clients, the agents, the other side as well, if we can find a way to get the transaction closed. And I'll relay a story we had last week with one of our closings, sort of an example of how you have to think properly and not just stand on legal principles and find a solution. So we're acting for a buyer, routine transaction, supposed to close last Wednesday, like a week ago. And they're getting their lending from a conventional lender, but they ran into some underwriting issues on the day of closing, and the lender wasn't prepared to advance the funds, and it was going late in the day. And anyways, they couldn't close. They said they were not going to advance the funds. And the lender said, we need, extend till Friday. There's a good chance we might be able to close on Thursday, but for sure by Friday, we should be able to advance. We just have to complete our underwriting and then we're good to go. So we get in touch with the seller and the seller's lawyer to alert them to this, and apologetic and everything. And we need to extend for 2 days. And we offered right up front, we'll cover the seller's costs. And the seller didn't need the money to buy another property. Okay. So they had arranged, they're already out. It wasn't like they needed this money in order to complete another transaction. So it should have been a no-brainer to get an extension for a day or two. So we asked for extension, they will cover the seller for all their costs. And the agents were on side, like, no problem. They're pushing it. The seller's lawyer takes the position and advises the other side, no, Wednesday is the closing date. They're in breach of the agreement of purchase. They're telling us they can't close. They're in breach. You can keep their $100,000 deposit and sell it to somebody else, because the market has gone up, and you could probably get an extra $100,000 by putting it back on the market. So don't agree to a 1 or 2 day extension. Just let's hammer them, because you're standing on legal principles. Time is of the essence, we talked about, and technically that's a breach of contract, right? If you don't close on the closing date, right?
It's a tough position to take, right?
Yeah, but does that really make sense for everybody? So I meet with one of our associate lawyers about this to discuss it and talk it through. And then he went back and did a fabulous job of convincing the other lawyer how wrong he was in taking that position. Because you take that position, we're not going to walk away from our deposit. Our client's not going to walk away or walk away the house. We're going to be forced into litigation and say, they're taking unreasonable position. We're not asking for a month extension or anything. We show them we have funding available. We have a commitment. We're ready to go. We need maybe 12 hours. Maybe we need 24 hours, and we're going to close. So we said, do you want to not close, try and keep our deposit, put it back on the market, where you're clearly acting in bad faith, taking advantage of the situation of our client, when our client has told you in writing they will cover your seller for all their costs, so it'll cost your client nothing. Do you want to go to court and try and convince a judge that you acted in good faith? Forget about it's in COVID. Even in non-COVID, it's not good faith. But even COVID, you want to go in and convince a judge that the advice you gave to your client was good advice to try and keep the $100,000 deposit, sell it for more, just because they can, when they're asking for such a little, amount of time, and all costs are covered. So, anyways, our lawyer did Tamer again, did a fabulous job of convincing the other lawyer how wrong he was. And the other lawyer was a more experienced lawyer in years, but not in how to deal with transactions. He does other stuff, other type of law, and he's not focused on real estate. So he's like, oh, letter of the law, they're in breach. We could keep their deposit and
the essence, right?
But that's not the right advice to be giving to your client.
I love the fact that the principle of good faith applies to both sides, right? Like both sides have to be acting good faith to basically bring the transaction to a close, right? So acting on those principles not only applies to the buyer, but also applies to the seller.
Exactly. Like the buyer can't say, I need a 2-day extension and I'm not going to cover you for all your costs because you should have them on Wednesday. You're not going to get the money until Friday. You're not earning interest on that money. You got a mortgage to pay off. You got utilities. You got insurance. No, we have to act. The buyer has to act in good faith too, and cover those costs to keep the seller whole. Like the seller shouldn't lose money for it, but it's not intended for there to be a windfall for a seller to just take advantage of something like that. So, technically, legally, they could have pushed that position, but were they, was that lawyer serving his client's best interests to get him involved in litigation
Right.
over something like that?
So I love the approach that you took. You took the seller out of the equation, right? And you went back to the lawyer and saying, listen, is this really the advice you want to give to your seller? Because you're the one that's instigating litigation here in
Right.
a bad faith situation. And
Right.
the lawyer probably took a step back and said, wow, they're right. The buyer showed me a commitment. It's just a time delay. That's not even the buyer's fault. It's the fault of the lender, because we all know that every single lender is absolutely swamped right now. And it's actually common knowledge, right?
Right.
And, they're giving us something in writing. They're willing to cover all the costs. They're not asking for a lengthy extension. It's actually quite a reasonable extension. We're only talking about a matter of hours, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why is that lawyer placing his client in a situation where, yes, maybe they are reading the letter of the law to the exact, but are they acting in good faith?
Right. And when you think it through, let's say we extend till Friday. If we can't close on Friday, let's say the financing falls apart and we cannot close, then the seller's back in the same position. They can default us on the Friday and keep the deposit and put it back in the market and sell it. So there's no downside to them by not cooperating. And what was interesting here, it wasn't the agent, the seller's agent saying, oh, you know what? That's great. They're not closing because I can get them $100,000 more if we put it on the market. Like the agent was saying, no, let's get this thing closed. Like it should just close, get my commission and move on to the next thing. But all of a sudden the lawyer weighs in on, and that's not the function of the lawyer to do that. The agent may have told the lawyer, if we have to go back on the market, are we going to sell for less? Are we going to sell for more? And he says, no, I can probably get more right now. But that shouldn't be the influencing factor here. You still have, it's what we've been talking about the last few weeks on these, but there has to be some good faith both ways. And if you have bad faith, you're going to get hammered if it does go to court, right?
It's the principle of clean hands, right?
Yes. Right. So that's what, and here we're asking for, the buyer's asking, begging, I need an extension, but, what can we do? What terms do you need to agree to this? Tell us what you need to keep you whole to, if they would have asked for a further deposit or something, we could give them that. If they would ask for a release of the deposit monies or some of it, we could have done something like that. Those are reasonable requests, but to do nothing is not acting in good faith.
Yeah. And the other thing is, we talked about this before. Do you really want to place the faith of your client into a third party hand, right? Into the court system, into a judge's hand,
right?
Simply because you're sitting on a high horse and sticking to your legal principles. But when you look at the overall context of really what's happening there, it just doesn't make any sense.
Right. So anyways, we were happy we were able to convince the other lawyer he was wrong, and we closed on the Friday. We got the financing and it closed in the normal course. Seller was happy. They got what they were supposed to get. They got their costs covered. Buyer was happy. Lender was happy. Agents were happy. And I think the lawyer learned something from dealing with us.
Yeah, and again, it's quality of representation matters, and I say this to my agents all the time. You and your clients don't need a good lawyer until you need a lawyer, right? And that's why you hire the best. And when something goes south, you're fully protected. So that's a great story, Dave. My office was dealing with something, a similar situation where one of my agents sold a property, and the property that the offer that came in was a firm offer. And then the next day, another property got listed by another agent in a similar neighborhood, and my office didn't receive the deposit. So upon some further investigation, my agent found out that that buyer that submitted the firm offer went and bought the second property that got listed a day later, and had some conversation with that listing agent and found out and determined that it's the same buyer, and called me for advice of what she should do. And what's really interesting here in this situation is the first thing I said to her, well, listen, you know what, there is damages here because the buyer signed under seal, and even though the deposit wasn't delivered, it's a firm offer, and they have to be held to that contract. And our agent was going to call the other agent on the other side and see if they could not go through with that transaction and perform on our transaction. And what was really interesting here is I had to give her the advice and say, listen, you can't induce another party to breach another contract, right? So if the buyer chooses not to perform under this contract, there's certain ramifications that are allowable under the law to your sellers. But if the other contract is consumed and deposit is delivered on the other contract, we can't interfere with the performance of that contract. So a lot of really interesting legal plays at hand, and again, really interesting situations that do arise from time to time. But I told my agents that we need to concentrate on relisting the property and holding the seller's fiduciary duties at best interest. And if we get even a better price than the offer that we received, then there really are no damages, and our seller wins.
Right, and then you move on. As
then we move on,
as it might be, and you don't like it, and you don't like what they did. When you analyze it, if there are no damages, move on. And hopefully you sell for a better price or as good a price, and then you just go. And it's great they've got your guidance on things like that, because isn't it amazing? Like when you think you've seen everything, that there's always a new fact situation that comes up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I told her, because she was going to have a conversation with her sellers, and I said to her, listen, don't focus on this negative situation that happened. You can always keep in the back pocket and see where you land after you sell the house again, if there are in fact damages. But really focus on reselling the property and getting your sellers even a better price than came in previously.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's important for a brokerage to have someone at the top like you that has experience, can give them guidance and proper leadership. And you and I have talked about leadership over the years too, in our respective businesses, and we have similar viewpoints about, and I'll let you explain, where do you get your leadership principles? Like what's your training to become a good leader of your brokerage?
Well, you know what, I have to attribute a lot of it to playing sports growing up, right? And I mean, how sports have kind of shaped my viewpoint on how I run my business is really incredible. There are a lot of parallels between sports and running a business, and especially how strong your team is, right? And we see this all the time, that even when you have a superstar soccer player or a superstar basketball player on the team doesn't necessarily win unless the team comes together. And in business, it's no different, right? You are as strong as your weakest link is your company. So again, we offer a lot of training, not only to our agents, but we invest a lot into our people here at Sutton Summit as well. We want to make sure we have the best people to support our agents. We want to make sure that we invest in them as well. And it's so important.
Yeah, and I agree 100% with that. I grew up very active in sports and in team sports for the most part. I wasn't playing tennis and golf growing up. I was playing soccer primarily as a kid, and then got into basketball and some football, but it was always team sports. And over the course of that, I took quite a few courses on leadership, through that. And my high school even sent me to a course for 2 weeks up in Northern Ontario. One student from every high school would attend this leadership camp, and you had 2 weeks of training with people that are generally pretty good athletes and sports minded, but what the focus was real, how do you become leaders of your team and in your community, and how that translates and eventually into business. And those skills, I draw on those things all the time. I did it as a player. I did it when I was coaching kids. And like you say, a good coach recognizes that you're only as good as the weakest guy in your team. And that doesn't mean that they're necessarily weak. What you have to do is find out what their strengths are. Yes. And what they do best. You got to find out what everybody does best and put them in a position to succeed, right? So if you're the grinder winger on the Leafs, you're Zach Hyman or something like that, what's the best role for him? You want one of them on every line, I think, but you got to find out what does he do best and put him in a position to succeed. And the same thing for us as a law firm. We have clerks, we have administrative people, we have accounting people, we have lawyers. With each one, we have discussions with them. We go through review process. We want them to be doing things where they're comfortable, where there's growth, but where they're going to succeed as well. So I don't, we have the concept of weakest link, but we don't look at them as weak. We look at them, this one is better suited to this. So let's give them support and make them really good at doing that. And if someone else is really good at something else, then let's focus on that. And I know you've got to do the same thing with your people.
Yeah, 100%. The question I keep asking myself on a daily basis is how can I, as the owner of Sutton Summit Realty, support my staff better so, they have the tools, resources, and support so they can excel in their jobs, right? And I ask myself that question each and every single day. I work for my staff, right? My staff doesn't work for me. That's kind of the mentality that I have. And it's always really paid dividends for me.
Right. And that's a great attitude to have. It's what can you do for them, not what they're doing to help you run a business. No, you're there to support them. You need them to be successful in their roles and their jobs. And you're just you're the coach and the captain of the team that helps give them guidance and put them in the right position.
Yeah.
And
when you approach your business from that perspective, everything kind of falls into place by itself, right? Because your staff take care of you if you take care of them. And I mean, it's really that simple, right? But the bigger picture is harder to implement. But when you can keep that principle in mind, running your company, it really is wonderful to step back and watch it kind of all unfold in front of you.
Right. And both of our businesses, I think, push the team concept on how we do things. And we want everybody that joins it to feel like they're part of the team and they're an integral part of the team. Yeah. And we try not to be, protective over certain things. We try and share clients, share knowledge, advance everybody's career. We have weekly staff meetings, we have weekly lawyer meetings, because if we bring up things that happen, like that example, that case we just talked about. We want to bring that up at a meeting so everybody else can learn from the same example, not just the person that experienced it. We want to pass that on, right? And that's why you encourage your agents to attend the webinars and the training sessions and things like that, because there's always something you're going to learn, no matter how experienced you are.
Yeah.
Nobody ever heard that scenario that you just described, because when somebody got offers on two different properties. So it'd be good for an agent to hear that and think about it.
Yeah. That's one of the first things I implemented when I took over Sutton Summit, is that we brought all the departments much closer together, because before our front desk was completely separate from our admin, was completely separate from the realtor care department. And the first thing we did is we brought everybody together, right? So everybody communicates and over communicates and understands how important everybody's role is, right? And then interdepartment helping each other, and it was just amazing to see the level of respect rise, and appreciation, and the whole team camaraderie. And front desk was cheering for trades when trades achieved certain milestones, and trades was cheering for front desk when they achieved certain milestones. So it completely changes the culture of the company, and the agents feel it right away. It's a different way of running a business, right?
Right. And everybody has to have some understanding of what other departments do to make the whole thing work. So the agents just can't say, "Oh, I'm an agent, so I'm one of the key people here, because if I don't bring any business, the admin staff doesn't get paid," right? So they can't take that position. They have to understand what the admin staff does and what the accounting department does to support them, and the front desk and everything. And they have to have a real respect for it. And sometimes you have to work through issues, and we certainly do it. We've had same thing. We have clerks, they're under pressure to get deals closed, but they're waiting for funds. So they get upset sometimes with our accounting people. It's not happening fast enough. We didn't get to the bank fast enough. We didn't transfer the funds fast enough. they're calling, sending emails. At some point, they've got to understand what goes on in the accounting department and how, and that it's not all under their control. They're at the whim of the lenders who are swamped. And so you have to relax a little bit, but you have to understand what everybody else is going to understand, what their job is, and appreciate that they're doing their job as good as they can.
Yeah.
And if there's
and vice versa, right?
And vice versa. And the accountants understand why the clerks are in such a frenzy and bugging them so much, right? So everybody has to understand what the other is doing, but you can't say one is more important than the other. We can't close a deal without everybody.
Yeah.
So,
but David, the other wonderful thing that sports really brings to the table when it comes to running our prospective businesses is, I believe that the job of any CEO or owner or entrepreneur is really sales and promotion of their services, of their business, of their products, right? And I mean, this is what we do on a daily basis. And I think part of that promotion is, you have to maintain good health. You have to maintain a certain energy. You have to maintain, you have to stay fit and really portray that energy level. And sports really plays a big part of that as well. Right? Being the best version of yourself, right? Staying fit, right? Having that high energy level.
Right. That's important. I'm not quite as active as I used to be, I think, when I was younger, but I still, try and stay in shape best I can. I try and get out there for a run 3-4 times a week, because that's sort of my main go-to. I miss the fact that I'm not playing on in sports teams anymore. Through COVID, but until the year just before COVID, I was still playing pickup hockey on Thursday nights with a bunch of guys. The game was going on for about 30 years, and you miss that because again, it's a team thing to do, but it's just a chance to be with the guys in the dressing room, and that's where you find out what's going on in the world too. A chance to connect, and you get a chance to see what's going on in other people's businesses. So I really miss that, and COVID's really shut a lot of that down right now. And even to get out golfing and things like that, when you've got 4 hours with 3 other people that either they're friends or their family or their business acquaintances, and you get a chance to talk to them and see what's going on.
Yeah, I think a lot of positives come out of sport, and a lot of it is transferable to business, right? Even the whole unplugging, right? Like I remember, my God, I haven't played tennis for almost a year now, right? Because of the lockdown and the situation that we've been in. But it's probably the one time in my life where I actually put my phone away, believe it or not, where I'm not by my phone, right? When I step onto the court for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, my phone is nowhere near me, right? It can ring, it can do whatever. I am not by my phone. And it's so important to really unplug, right? All that really matters in that moment is me and the ball. Right. And when you connect, when my racket connects with the ball, and I can feel that sweet spot right in the middle of my racket, and I can guide that ball and really feel it on the racket, and I can see that shot zip through the court, that's a wonderful feeling, right? And I hang on to that feeling. Even when I'm not playing tennis, right? As crazy as that sounds, but when people play sports at really high levels, they know what I'm talking about.
Right. And the amount of benefit you get just from the stress release and the anxiety release by taking that time, that hour or whatever, to play that and focus on that, and focus on not just playing it, but I know you're a competitive athlete, and you grew up as a competitive athlete. You're trying to play it as well as you can right now at this stage of life, so you challenge yourself. You're not just going out there to play. If you miss it. No, you're out there trying to get every shot, right? And make that sweet shot off the racket and hear that sound that you only get when you hit it exactly right.
100%.
And I do little challenges when I'm running too. Like I've always got my timer on, and I run certain routes and everything. But I'm always challenging myself to keep a certain pace, or to beat that pace, or to, things like that. And I think that just goes to our competitive nature. Like it's just not, okay, I'm going to go for a run. If it takes me, usually it's a half hour. If it takes me 40 minutes, so what? I ran. So Like that would upset me. Like what do you mean?
It's funny you mention that, because when I go to the gym and I see people like strolling between equipment and like, walking around with their head up, I'm like, what are you doing here? Like usually when I go to the gym, I work, right? Like I'm there for, whatever time I am, but I put in my work, and that time is important to me, and I want to make the most of it. So it's kind of interesting.
Well, and another aspect of sports teaching you business is just being a competitive personality, understanding what it takes to try and win. So you want to win the battle. You're trying to entice a new agent to come to you, and there's competing offers from other places. Like you want to win that battle, right? And you want to come up with the right arguments and the right thing, and you're going to go the extra mile to do it. And we want to win getting files in and getting business and making new clients and winning over agents and winning over clients. And that's it's an important part of our rules, but part of it is because we're competitive. You learn how to be competitive and say, no, that's not good enough. Not settling at a certain level. No, I want to win this battle. I want to win this battle. You win enough battles, you win the war, right? And you got to go in the corners and you got to dig. And that's not the nicest thing. You'd rather sit in the slot and wait for someone else to dig the puck out and you put it into the net. No. If you want to really win, you got to know when you got to get dirty and get in front of the net and get hacked and whacked and everything. The same thing in business. You're gonna have battle scars, but if you care and you're competitive enough, you find a way to win more than you lose, and you succeed. And all that goes back to how you are in sports. Are you playing the game, or are you playing to win?
Yeah, and mental toughness is such an important discipline that you learn through like competitive sports, right? And I think one of the best books I read on mental toughness, I don't know, David, if you had a chance to read this book, but it's by David Goggins. I can't remember the title, but what an amazing book about mental toughness. And he was a Navy SEAL and an Army Ranger, and he talks about how he goes through their training and kind of what he does, and just amazing the mental battles that he fought on a daily basis with himself to just push his body to like completely extreme situations, right? And this guy would swim in the ocean, like ice cold ocean, for like 14 hours and run marathons that were like just crazy, and all to push himself to the absolute limits, right? So I remember reading that book, and I went to play tennis the next day, and I was playing against this opponent that we have some tough battles. Yeah. And I just remember I was down a set, and I think it was like set point, and I'm just like, you know what? Not today. It's not happening. And I dug in deep, and I just battled and battled and battled and got the ball back and got the ball back and got the ball back. And I won that set, and I won the next set, and I beat this guy, and I wasn't playing my best tennis, but just being able to really step back and really deep and give it all I have. It was just amazing how I was able to sort of control that situation and the mental discipline that it took, but it was amazing.
Yeah, and you're challenging yourself. What goes in your mind that your opponent doesn't know what your mental thoughts are and what's going on. After the game, when you kill him, he might say, wow, you were really on your game today, and kudos to you. But he may not understand, what it took for you to just say, what, no, not today. Like, I'm going to find a way, right?
Yeah. The name of the book is "Can't Hurt Me" by David Goggins. Yeah? Amazing.
Okay, I'll try and find that.
Yeah.
That's a great example, great story.
Yeah. And David, I mean, there's, I think, 12 chapters in that book, and each chapter is like a different level of crazy, right? So as you're like, you read the first chapter, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe he did that, right? Like, I just can't believe it. Like, it's crazy, right? And then you read the next chapter and it's like another level of crazy, right? And then I think chapter 11 is him trying to beat the Guinness World Record for pull-ups, right? And
Yeah.
he does it. He sets the
Yeah.
Guinness World Record for the most pull-ups in a 24-hour period. And like by this stage, the guy's an Army Ranger, he's a Navy SEAL, which are the two like toughest designations to get in the Army, right? I think he has like 30 of the world's longest marathons under his belt. We're talking about like 100-mile marathons through like the jungle in Hawaii and stuff like that, right? Like to the point where like his knees are bleeding as he's running, you know what I mean? And then like the guy sets the Guinness World Book of Records for the most pull-ups.
Wow.
And you're like, why, right? But it's the whole aspect of just challenging yourself and fighting with yourself and pushing yourself to the limits. And you know, a lot of that discipline and hard work can and is transferable into business.
Right, it is, and look, you and I are never going to try and be Navy SEALs, and we hold them to the, you know, that's the highest standard, and like, you know, these guys are, it's unbelievable what they can do, what the physical body can do, what they go through. I have tremendous respect for that, but the point is, it's what can we learn for us mere mortal humans? You know, what can we learn from their example and their mental toughness and their discipline and their commitment? And we may never reach those levels, but we can take those principles and try and reach as high a level as we can in our personal lives and our professional lives, and as leaders in our communities, as leaders of our families, as leaders of our businesses, because all these things translate to everyday life. So it's great to have those. You know, you read a book and it has that kind of influence on you. I grew up, you know, like I said, playing a lot of team sports. I had some fabulous coaches, you know, who really cared, and they did research, and they looked for drills, and they looked for motivation, and they looked to teach, and they would teach us certain things and tell us, this is not only going to help you win your soccer game or your basketball game, but this is going to help you through life. They were telling us those things because I had good, you know, and you know, you're a teenager going, oh yeah, sure, you know,
right,
you know, like,
in one ear out the other, right?
Yeah, but part of it sticks to you,
Of course,
right?
yeah.
Especially if you have respect for those that are teaching it to you,
Yeah.
you know, as coaches. And the same thing translates to what we do with our staff and everything. There's a certain level of respect and you know, that they give us when we do explain things to them, because we know that we're looking out for their best interests in addition to the best interests of our firms. We want them to succeed. We want our businesses to succeed. We want them to succeed in life too. We don't want them to. We're not pushing everybody to work, and then we want you to have no personal life. And if you die, you die. Like, we don't take that attitude. It's like, we recognize that some people are maxed out, and we got to try and help them. Right? We got to help. Everybody's got to try and achieve that right balance.
Yeah, I think as leaders, you know, if you build other leaders or help other people in your organization become leaders, that's how you're going to really accelerate your success, right? That's the multiplying effect, right? And I think your coaches in your team sports were trying to do the same thing, right? They were giving you all these tools that you didn't even realize at the time they're giving you, but they were actually creating leaders in their in respective communities, right?
Right.
And the more of that you can do, same within your business, the more successful you'll be.
Right.
And it's always that scarcity mindset that really holds you back, right? Because I mean, I know that you know, certain owners and certain leaders out there don't want to empower their employees as much as possible because they're scared of losing them, right? And you know, that is a natural progression in life, right? But if you hold people back from really being able to achieve what it is that they can achieve, then you know what, that's probably the worst example of leadership out there. You know, I think having a scarcity mindset in life and business, I think that's the biggest roadblock to success. I think if you help people and you empower people to become leaders and to excel, and I encourage, like, we had a brand ambassador that recently left us to pursue an opportunity at a triple A level company that has a great pension plan and all the right benefits. And when he came to talk to the management team about moving on, he was taken back how encouraging we were, right? Not because we wanted to lose him, because we did, right? But at the same time, I don't want to hold back my staff. I want them to grow. I want them to excel. I want them to become leaders in the community. And you just don't know who's watching, right? We have other employees here, right? They're going to watch how I handle the situation, and how I sort of respond to that situation. And I hope that they know that I wish them exactly the same thing that I wish Khalid that left, right? And um, if I had a scarcity mindset, I'd be trying to talk him out of going, right?
Right.
And,
But then
and
you're
that's
looking at, that's just what's good for you. It's not necessarily what's good for him.
exactly correct, right? But
Right.
is it good for me in the long run? Because at some point the relationship sours, right? And some point I'm not going to get that full utility out of him anymore because of whatever reason, right?
Right.
So
Right. That's
it,
important, though. I think you have to, as a leader, you have to empower other people to do their job and succeed in their job, and not give them just a certain amount, knowing that they can only go so far, and then they have to bring me in to help make a final decision. Like, you have to empower people to get good at their job and their role, and give them the support that they need. And we look at it that way. Every time we hire somebody, a clerk, admin, accounting, lawyer, we're Jonathan and I look at the mindset like we're hiring someone for life. Like, we want them to be here forever. If we really like them and think they're a good fit, we want them to come in. Now, of course, there's going to be things that are going to come up during their careers with us that they may not be satisfied with, or they want to. So we have to be in touch, and we have to be in tune with them. And our attitude is, whatever you think you might get somewhere else and think you might have to leave to get it, come talk to us first, and let's get that to you here. Let's see if that's available for you here. Stay as part of the team. You want to develop something that's different that we're not doing right now? Great. What's the plan? Let's talk about it. Let's help you do that. Let's help you achieve that and do that here, instead of having to go to what you think might be greener pastures somewhere, but they're not. And look, we're not going to keep everybody to work in our office for 50 years, but we've had a lot of examples of people that were here for over 30 years, in our firm, and and got here and stayed and then retired as clerks in our firm. So we've had it. So it's achievable, but we have the mindset that we want that for everybody. Okay. And of course, we're going to lose some for different reasons along the way, but don't go somewhere else thinking that you can't achieve your goals with us. How can we help you? How can we make that happen?
yeah. And the grass is not always greener on the other side too, right? Conversation, transparency, very important. Goal setting, right? Knowing what the employee wants and what their goals are for the future and how they fit into your organization. All extremely important goals to be having on a really regular basis with everybody working for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if somebody comes to you and says, "Listen, I want to own a law firm at some point," that there's a benefit to having that conversation as well, right? There's certain things that you can do as a business owner to help them get there one day, right?
Right. And my answer is, yeah, I want you to own Kormans. I want you to, right now, look at it that way. You should be thinking of it that way, that you're part of it.
Yeah.
Yes, the firm has a history, but it's not like, okay, no one's ever getting into the club. No, there's growth in our firm. Our firm is, as you know, our firm has grown a lot over the last 5-6 years. And it's going to
now imagine, David, if you have that conversation with an associate lawyer, for example, how much more utility are you going to get out of that person because that door or that window or that opportunity is on the table,
Right. For sure. We want them to know that opportunity is there, and we want them to be part of the process, and we include them in our growth, in our development of our systems, our improvement of how we do things, in our discussions. Because we're not hiring someone just so we're going to tell them what to do. This is the way we've done it for 40 years. So this is what you have to do. The business changes every day. The systems change that we deal with every single day. Practicing real estate law right now is so different from when I started. For every aspect of it, from the way you search title, the way you register, going to registry offices and then lineups, like the whole system is different. And what the youngest ones are doing now, they're going to be doing something completely different 5 years from now.
Yeah.
So we want them to evolve with us and tell us, what can we do to become better? Take ownership now of this. And if you do take ownership now, if that's your attitude, then you will be an owner of it.
100%.
It is yours. You're building it as much as I'm building it. And that's the attitude that we take. Jonathan and I are of the same mind when it comes to that's what we want. We want the firm to grow, and it's going to be around way beyond my career. And the guys that are working, the guys and the ladies that are working it now as lawyers, they're going to be, that's the next generation. And we're going to hire more under them, and they're going to be bringing them along the same way. And the firm should be around for a long time, way beyond me and eventually beyond Jonathan. Like, why not?
And that's a great outlook as well. David, I think we're going to cut it here. And I think next week we're going to continue how sports have shaped our respective businesses, because I still think there's a lot to add. And I think in the future, we should also mention mentors and how mentors shaped, or coaches shaped our prospective businesses as well, because I think that's very, very important. I know for me, I have 3 mentors I've been very close to, and I get different things from each one, but I think that'd be a really great conversation, and I think our audience would really enjoy hearing about that as well. But great conversation today. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and looking forward to continuing this conversation next week.
Yeah, looking forward to it already. Mentorship is an important thing of our lives and our businesses, and now we're in the role of hopefully being the mentors to some extent, and it comes around. So that'll be a great thing to discuss next week. Looking forward to it already, David.
Awesome, David. Thanks so much. Have a great week. Stay productive. Enjoy the sunshine, and we'll see you next week.
Everybody stay safe out there. Take care.
Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market and dive deep to understand the issues affecting buyers, sellers, investors, and businesses. If you love real estate as much as we do, sit back, relax, and gain an insider's edge to the exciting world of real estate. David Gorski is a broker and the owner of Sutton Summit Realty, a powerhouse brokerage providing guidance to over 180 realtors. And David Korman is a partner at Kormans LLP, a respected law firm specializing in residential and commercial real estate transactions, with offices located in Toronto, Mississauga, and Markham.